All right, welcome to another deep dive. We like to really dig into topics here, and today we're going to be looking at wilderness first aid and safety.
Yeah.
Now, you might think, oh, that's just for, the hardcore survivalists out there.
Right.
But really, it's relevant to anyone who spends time outdoors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if it's just a casual hike.
Mm-hmm.
So, before we jump into like the nitty gritty,
Yeah.
I always think it's helpful to kind of understand the WHY.
Yeah.
Why is wilderness first aid different
Right.
than, say, regular first aid?
Totally.
So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the biggest difference is the time factor.
Yeah.
In an urban setting, if something happens, you can usually call 911.
Right.
Get help pretty quickly.
Yeah,
But in the wilderness, help can be hours or even days away.
that's a really good point.
Yeah, you have to shift your mindset from just stabilizing an injury
Right.
to potentially providing care for an extended period of time,
Yeah.
which is a whole other challenge.
Yeah, totally. And I imagine resources are another big factor.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't just run to the store
Right.
for bandages or pain relievers.
Exactly. You're limited to what's in your first aid kit
Mm-hmm.
and what you can improvise from your surroundings,
Right.
which we'll definitely talk more about later.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the environment itself.
Right.
Which can be a whole other wild card.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
the weather can change in an instant.
Mhm.
The terrain can be challenging,
Right.
and exposure to the elements,
Right.
heat, cold, rain, all of that
Yeah.
can become a real risk for both the injured person
Like so.
and anyone trying to help.
Okay, so we've got time, resources, environment.
Yep.
All these things making wilderness first aid unique.
Right.
Now, let's talk about some specific dangers we might encounter out there.
Okay.
And we've got some great sources for this deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
including the Canadian Red Cross's Wilderness Safety Guidelines and the book Don't Die in the Woods, which I love that title.
Very catchy.
It's very straightforward.
True to the point.
So, the Canadian Red Cross really emphasizes the unexpected dangers
Mm-hmm.
that can lurk in places like the vast Canadian wilderness.
Right. I mean, it's not just about like avoiding bears or moose.
Right, right.
Sometimes the biggest dangers come in much smaller packages.
Oh, really? Okay, so what are we talking here?
Well, have you ever heard of poison hemlock?
Poison hemlock.
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard of it, but I couldn't tell you anything about it.
Yeah. It's not as well known as like poison ivy,
Right.
but it can be incredibly dangerous,
Oh, wow.
even deadly in some cases.
Seriously? Okay.
Yeah, it contains toxins that attack the nervous system,
Oh, God.
causing all sorts of nasty symptoms.
Like what kind of symptoms?
Well, it starts with nausea, vomiting,
Okay.
weakness,
All right.
but it can progress to paralysis
Oh, no.
and respiratory failure.
Wow. Okay. I did not realize it was that serious.
Yeah, it's definitely not something to mess with.
So how do we avoid running into this poison hemlock?
Well, good question. It's important to be able to identify it.
Mm-hmm.
It can grow quite tall, sometimes up to 8 feet.
8 feet tall.
Yeah, it's got these smooth, hollow stems
Okay.
with purple blotches,
Okay.
fern-like leaves, and small white flowers
Got it.
clustered in these umbrella-shaped groups.
Okay, so I'm going to be honest with you. I am already picturing myself second-guessing every wildflower I see.
Right.
Like, is that a harmless daisy or is that poison hemlock?
I know it can be tough, but honestly, the key is to be observant
Okay.
and just avoid touching any plant
Right.
that you can't confidently identify.
That's good advice.
Yeah. And of course, if you do suspect someone's come into contact with poison hemlock
Mm-hmm.
or any other poisonous plant,
Right.
seek medical attention immediately,
Yeah, absolutely. Better safe than sorry.
for sure.
Okay, so we've covered some of the plant dangers.
Hmm.
What about animals?
Yeah, so,
Any tips for navigating those encounters?
yeah, both Don't Die in the Woods and the Canadian Red Cross
Yeah.
emphasize that, animal encounters can be unpredictable,
Yeah.
whether it's a bear, a moose,
Mhm.
a snake, or even a seemingly harmless creature.
Right.
It's
Right.
important to remember that you're entering their territory.
I mean, I've had a squirrel steal my sandwich right out of my hand before.
Really?
Yeah, I may have overestimated his cuteness factor.
They can be bold.
Yeah, they can be.
So yeah, I think being prepared and informed is key.
Okay.
Research the area you're visiting.
Mm-hmm.
Is it mating season for any animals?
Right.
Are there known areas of animal activity?
Right.
Things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And, of course, make noise while you hike,
Mm-hmm.
especially in dense areas so you don't startle any animals.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to sneak up on a bear.
Exactly.
All right, so knowledge is power,
Yeah.
especially in the wilderness.
Hmm?
Okay, so we've talked about some potential hazards.
Right.
Now let's shift gears to our essential gear checklist.
Okay. Good idea.
So the Canadian Red Cross recommends 12 essentials for any wilderness trip. What are some of the must-haves that really stand out to you?
You know, I'm really intrigued by the multi-tool knife.
Oh, yeah, the multi-tool.
It's not just a blade.
Right.
It's like a toolbox in your pocket.
Yeah.
We're talking corkscrews, saws, screwdrivers, tweezers. The list goes on.
Hold on, a corkscrew.
Yeah.
Is a celebratory wilderness toast part of our survival plan?
Yeah, a little morale boost never hurts.
I like your thinking.
But seriously, each of those tools serves a purpose.
Right.
A saw can be used for gathering firewood.
Yeah.
Tweezers are great for removing splinters.
Okay.
It's about having the right tool for the job, even in the wilderness.
Okay. I'm sold on the multi-tool knife.
Yeah.
What else on that list caught your attention?
The whistle.
The whistle.
And not just any whistle.
Right.
We're talking about a high-pitched, durable whistle
Okay.
that can cut through wind
Right.
and be heard over long distances,
Yeah.
which is crucial in an emergency
Yeah.
when your voice alone might not be enough.
Right. So it's like your personal distress beacon.
Exactly.
Love it.
Yeah.
Now, our sources also mention a shelter item,
Okay.
specifically a Mylar blanket
Yeah.
with ropes attached to each corner.
Oh, yeah.
What's the deal with the ropes?
That, my friend,
Yeah.
is for you to discover.
Come on, you're going to leave me hanging.
I don't want to give away all the wilderness secrets just yet.
Right. All right. I can take a hint.
Okay, good.
Consider my curiosity piqued.
All right.
But before I get lost down that rabbit hole, I think it's time to shift our focus to the idea of preparedness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Knowing what to pack is only part of the equation, right?
Totally. And speaking of preparedness, I can't stress enough the importance of honestly assessing your abilities.
Yeah.
Don't overestimate your skills.
Right.
Or underestimate the challenges of the wilderness.
Absolutely.
You know, it's about knowing your limits and preparing accordingly.
That is such a crucial point.
Yeah.
So, beyond packing the right gear,
Hmm.
what else should we be doing to prepare for a wilderness adventure?
You know, wilderness first aid courses are invaluable.
Yeah.
They provide hands-on training
Great.
and equip you with the skills to handle a variety of situations. And there are different levels of training available,
Really?
from basic wilderness first aid to more advanced wilderness first responder courses.
Okay.
Each one is designed for specific needs and skill levels.
You know, I think it's easy to assume that
Yeah.
basic first aid knowledge will translate to the wilderness.
Right.
But it sounds like that's not necessarily the case.
No, not at all. Wilderness first aid requires a
Yeah.
specific set of skills and considerations.
All right, yeah.
It's about being resourceful, adaptable,
Mhm.
and able to make critical decisions under pressure.
Wow, this deep dive is really highlighting just how complex
Yeah,
wilderness safety can be.
absolutely.
It's not just about, knowing how to treat a cut or a sprain.
Right.
It's about developing a whole mindset of preparedness
Totally.
and respect for nature.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah.
We've only scratched the surface here.
Yeah.
But hopefully this has given you a sense of the unique challenges and essential skills involved in wilderness first aid.
Absolutely. All right, so we've talked about the unique challenges of wilderness first aid.
Yeah.
And the importance of prepared, having the right gear,
Right.
knowing your limits. But now let's put that knowledge into practice
Okay.
and dive into some specific scenarios
Yeah.
we might encounter out in the wild.
Okay.
So are you ready to test our wilderness first aid skills?
I'm ready.
Okay, great.
Let's do it.
So let's start with a common injury,
Okay.
bleeding.
All right.
So imagine you're on a hike
Mm-hmm.
and someone trips, they fall.
Yeah.
They end up with a deep gash on their leg.
Okay.
What's the first thing you do?
All right. So first things first.
Yeah.
We got to control that bleeding, right?
Sure.
So I'm grabbing my first aid kit.
Mhm.
I'm getting some sterile gauze pads,
Hmm.
applying direct pressure to the wound,
Okay.
and elevating that injured leg.
Okay, so those are the same basic steps as regular first aid?
Exactly. The principles are the same.
Okay.
But in the wilderness, you might have to improvise a bit.
Right, you might not have like a fancy bandage.
Exactly.
So you might have to get creative with what you have.
Totally.
Okay, so let's say the wound is more severe
Okay.
and the bleeding just isn't slowing down.
All right.
What would you do next?
So in a really serious situation,
Yeah.
you might consider a tourniquet.
Okay. I've heard of tourniquets,
Yeah.
but I also know they can be dangerous if not applied correctly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're right to be cautious about tourniquets.
Okay.
They should only be used as a last resort
Huh.
in cases of life-threatening bleeding,
Got it.
where direct pressure just isn't working.
Right.
A tourniquet completely cuts off blood flow to the limb,
Right.
which can obviously cause serious complications
Yeah.
if it's left on for too long.
So if direct pressure and elevation aren't enough, are there any other options before we resort to a tourniquet?
Yeah, you can try packing the wound with additional gauze
Okay.
to help absorb the blood and apply pressure over a wider area.
So it's like layering and distributing that pressure.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, just keep that pressure consistent
Okay.
until the bleeding's under control.
All right, let's move on to another potential wilderness hazard.
Okay.
Hypothermia.
Hypothermia, yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, and both Don't Die in the Woods
Right.
and the Canadian Red Cross
Yeah.
really stress the importance of understanding and addressing hypothermia
Absolutely.
so it can sneak up on you, right?
Oh, yeah, especially if the weather changes unexpectedly.
Right.
Like, let's say you're on a hike
Yeah.
and someone in your group gets caught in a sudden downpour.
Okay. Yeah.
They're soaked through,
Mm.
shivering uncontrollably. Their teeth are chattering.
So they're clearly losing body heat.
Yeah, faster than they can produce it.
Okay, so shelter is a top priority, right?
Absolute number one priority.
Okay.
Get them out of the elements. ASA.
Okay, so find a cave.
If you can find a cave, that's great.
Build a lean-to.
Yeah, lean-to. Anything to protect them from the wind and rain.
Okay, what about getting them out of those wet clothes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Change them into dry layers.
Dry layers are essential.
Okay.
And if you have an emergency blanket in your first aid kit,
Yeah.
now's the time to use it.
So that'll reflect their body heat back to them?
Exactly, help warm them up.
Okay, so we're trying to prevent further heat loss.
Right.
And start to warm them up gradually.
Uh-huh.
Should we encourage them to move around?
Oh, that's a good question.
Like do some jumping jacks?
You know, it might seem counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but strenuous activity can actually worsen hypothermia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it depletes energy and can further lower body temperature.
Wow, I would not have thought of that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that seems like it would help,
Right.
but it actually can make things worse.
Okay, so no jumping jacks.
No jumping jacks.
Mhm. What's the best way to help them warm up safely then?
Passive rewarming is key.
Okay.
Help them get comfortable in their dry shelter.
Mm-hmm.
Wrap them in the emergency blanket.
Okay.
And if possible, offer warm liquids and high-calorie foods.
Okay, so warmth, rest, and nourishment.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, let's talk about less life-threatening,
Okay.
but still incredibly annoying.
Oh, yeah.
Wilderness. Woo!
Blisters.
Blisters, everybody's favorite.
I feel like everyone who's ever worn a pair of hiking boots
Right?
has a blister story to tell.
Oh, for sure. Blisters are definitely a common complaint.
Right.
And they can really put a damper on your adventure.
Yeah, they can make every step painful.
Exactly.
And even though they might seem minor, if
Yeah.
they're not cared for properly,
Yeah.
they can get infected.
Mm-hmm. Which can become a much bigger problem in the wilderness.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so prevention is key, but let's be realistic.
Yeah,
Blisters happen.
they do.
So what's the best way to address them in the wild? So Wilderness First Aider
Okay.
recommends moleskin
Okay.
as a great tool for blister care.
Moleskin.
Yeah,
All right.
it's durable, it's adhesive,
Okay.
and you can use it to protect hot spots
Okay.
and prevent further friction.
So, like, if you feel a hot spot forming,
Exactly.
you put some moleskin on there
Yeah, cover it up.
to prevent it from becoming a blister.
Right, and if a blister is already formed,
Yeah.
you can create like a donut shape out of moleskin
Okay.
and place it around the blister.
A moleskin donut. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah,
Okay, so it acts like a protective cushion.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'm definitely adding moleskin to my first aid kit.
Good idea.
Okay, last scenario for this segment.
All right.
The dreaded twisted ankle.
Oh,
I feel like I've seen this happen countless times on hikes.
yeah. It's one of the most common wilderness injuries.
Right.
And Don't Die in the Woods
Mm-hmm.
has some great advice on handling it.
Okay.
The acronym RICE-E is key here.
Twice.
Yeah. RICE.
Okay, what does that stand for?
It stands for rest,
Okay.
ice compression,
Mm-hmm.
and elevation.
Got it.
These 4 steps help to minimize swelling and pain.
Okay, so even if we're not sure if it's a sprain or a fracture,
Right.
we treat it the same way.
Exactly. It's always better to err on the side of caution
Right.
in the wilderness.
So rest the injured ankle,
Mm.
apply a cold compress if possible.
If you can.
Okay, use an elastic bandage for compression
Yeah.
and elevate the ankle.
Exactly.
Okay, RICE. Right, like it's easy to remember.
It is, yeah.
But what if the ankle is like really unstable
Okay.
or we suspect a possible fracture?
Yeah, good question.
Can we improvise a splint in the wilderness?
Absolutely. You can use trekking poles,
Okay.
branches, or even a rolled up sleeping pad
Ooh.
to create a splint.
Okay.
That'll help support the ankle and prevent further movement.
Wow, I never would have thought of using those items as splints.
Yeah, it's all about being resourceful.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay, before we wrap up this scenario section,
Okay.
there's one more unexpected wilderness first aid tool
All right.
I want to discuss.
Let's hear it.
So Silverant highlights the versatility of titanium cups and mugs
Oh, yeah. I too.
for emergency situations.
It's a great material
Okay.
for wilderness gear.
So tell me more about these magical titanium cups.
All right. So titanium is lightweight,
Mm-hmm.
it's durable,
Okay.
and incredibly heat resistant,
All right.
which makes it surprisingly useful for first aid purposes.
Okay. I'm intrigued. So how does a titanium cup come in handy in a first aid situation?
Well, for one thing, you can boil water in it for sterilization,
Oh, okay.
which is crucial for wound care.
Right. We don't want to introduce bacteria into an open cut.
Exactly. You can just boil water in the cup,
Yeah.
let it cool slightly, and use it to clean the wound before applying any dressings.
Okay, so the titanium's heat resistance makes it perfect for that.
Exactly.
Are there any other ways a titanium cup can be helpful?
Oh, yeah. Think about signaling for help.
Okay.
The reflective surface of a titanium cup
Yeah.
can be used to flash sunlight towards potential rescuers,
Okay.
acting like a makeshift signal mirror.
Oh, wow. Like a little heliograph.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And if you strike a titanium cup,
Mm-hmm.
it creates a resonant sound
Okay.
that can carry for quite a distance.
So it could attract attention?
Potentially, yeah.
That's amazing. It's incredible how a simple cup could
Right.
become such a valuable tool.
It's all about thinking outside the box
Yeah.
and being resourceful.
It really highlights that.
For sure.
Wow, we have covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into wilderness first aid and safety.
We have.
From poison hemlock to titanium cups.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much there is to learn.
It is.
About staying safe and handling emergencies out in the wild.
Right. And like we said, we've only scratched the surface here.
Yeah, I'm feeling a mix of I'm ready for anything,
Yeah.
and maybe I should invest in a bigger first aid kit.
Good idea.
But before we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the one most important piece of wisdom you would leave our listener with?
That's a good question. I think it's this.
Okay.
Knowledge is empowering, but in the wilderness, humility is your greatest asset.
Okay.
Never underestimate the power of nature
Right.
and always err on the side of caution.
Yeah, that's so important.
A well-stocked first aid kit is crucial,
Mm-hmm.
but your judgment and preparedness are the most valuable tools you have.
That's such a powerful reminder. It's not just about the gear. It's about the mindset.
Exactly.
Respect the wilderness, be prepared for the unexpected,
Yeah.
and trust your instincts.
Absolutely.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
But before we go, I want to echo one final thought.
Okay.
Don't let this deep dive be your only preparation.
Right.
Seek out proper wilderness first aid training.
Yeah. Those courses are invaluable.
It's an investment in your safety and
Yeah.
peace of mind. And it could honestly make all the difference in your next wilderness adventure.
Couldn't agree more.
To all our fellow adventurers out there,
Yeah.
stay curious.
Stay safe.
And as always,
Happy trails.
happy trails.